Ray is the founder and chairman of Constellation Research, a very distinguished analyst, author of several books. He'll speak about the latest in a minute. Maybe you know his blog as well, Software Insider's Point of View. And I'm looking forward to have you here. It's better than a coffee, usually, his presentation. He really wakes you up. Thank you, Ray. Welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah? Here you go.
Oh, thank you. We are on. I'm signing books? All right, Marcy, I'm signing books. I think after lunch. Well, hey, at lunch. Okay, great. Well, good morning, everyone. How you doing? We're going to talk about digital business models, transformation, but we're going to talk about different types of transformation, and then we're going to talk about some rules around the post-sale, on-demand attention economy. I know, that was a mouthful, wasn't it? Sure. But before I start, I want to know who here is actually on like pure licensing policy, licensing models. All right, who here is on the engineering side, product side? All right, here's who's on the marketing side. All right, cool, very interesting, very cool. So what we're talking about here, and I think for some of you who've been here before, you've seen this evolution as we're progressing out of this as a service economy into a lot more, which is really what's happening around digital transformation. And so what I want to start with is really talking about this one slide here. This is an important slide. It's 52% of the Fortune 500 merged, acquired, gone bankrupt, fallen off the list, never ever coming back again. This is not because of the internet. This is not because of a set of technologies. This is not because of a global financial crisis. What's happening here is a business model shift. It's a digital business model shift. We are all in the middle of that. You hear Mark Andreessen talk about software eats the world. You hear about companies are all becoming tech companies. This is the shift that we're talking about. And when this shift happens, we have a huge shift in terms of winner-takes-all markets. Think about every industry. The number one, number two, number three player are grabbing anywhere from 40 to 70% of the market share and 40 to 77% of the total profits. It is a winner-takes-all market. And this is really why we call this a post-sale. Everything after the sale has a bigger value chain than just the initial sale of a product, service, experience, or insight. And it's an on-demand because we're getting smaller and smaller slices of products, services, experiencers, or insights. And it's an attention economy because if I don't capture your attention or save you time, you don't care. You don't have time for that. And that's why we're in this post-sale on-demand attention economy, which is a mouthful. Now, some of you guys have seen this before because you've been here, but I really want to go through this because it's important to think about innovation in a different way. There's incremental innovation and there's transformational innovation, and they work very differently. Let me show you something really interesting here. Yell out what you see. Nothing. Excellent. How did that work? Yell out what do you see? Okay. When did the Walkman come out? 80s. 35 years ago, this was Sony's last real innovation. Anyone from Sony here? Sorry. Pictures? Oh, PlayStation doesn't count. You're from electronics, okay. PlayStation. All right, all right. Portable music, right? Portable music was in go ahead, what was saying? Portable music was like, that was the beauty of this, right? The ability to take things and move. Right? Now, if you think about it going forward, think about where Sony, when we were kids in the 80s, we're like, wow, it was Sony, right? We looked at Sony the same way we looked at Apple, right? And that was kind of a very, very different way. Now, ooh, I'm going to keep hitting this thing. This is interesting. All right. And so when we looked and said, what was next, right? I waited 7 to 8 years for the next incremental innovation. Things were smaller. Things were better. Things were maybe a little cheaper. There's some additional features, right? And so what I waited for 7 years later, which I had to pick up in Akihabara, I could not buy at JRNR Music World, was the double cassette Walkman. 180 minutes, right? Rechargeable battery, right? The ability, but it was smaller, and that's what incremental innovation looks like. Now, we can look at the iPod and say the iPod was innovative, but let's be honest, this was the worst sounding music player. This had the worst battery life. That UI sucked, right? But people loved it anyways. But let's think about what was at the heart of this. In 2001, when the iPod came out, how much did you pay for a CD? 15 bucks, 12 bucks. Ooh, someone got a good deal. 10 bucks. How'd you get 10 bucks? All right, who got one good song? Come on, raise your hands. Did you get one good song? Who got two good songs? All right, let's say you got two. If you got two, you spent anywhere from $7 to $8 per song. I paid $0. I had Napster, LimeWire, Russian MP3 sites. I never paid for music. But the innovation here was not about the product. The innovation here was the business model. And that business model went from 0 to 99 cents for me and went from $8 to 99 cents for you. And that's what really drove the shift. It's a business model shift in terms of the transformational innovation. This was not about the product. The product wasn't better. When the iPhone 6 came out, or when the iPhones in general came out, right, what happened by this point? This was a battle for ecosystems. This was a battle for something different. This one device killed 27 business models. Think about it. Do you need a camcorder? Do you need a flip can? Where do you get your music? What do you do with $400 digital cameras? Those all go away. Flashlight manufacturers completely disrupted by the iPhone. Who's bought a flashlight in the last year? You might have got a mag light. I mean, I don't know, right? So this is what we're talking about. We're talking about this type of transformation. This is transformational innovation, not incremental innovation. Now, is it about getting products out there faster? Is anyone here from Samsung before I insult anybody else? Samsung, on this hand, puts out a new phone every 43 days. Apple puts out a new phone once a year. That's about it, right? That's not about it. Is it faster? No. Right? But, oh, that's Samsung. OK. And when you look at Xiaomi, this is a very different thing. What's Xiaomi doing? Xiaomi puts out phones at $150 a phone. Now, let's revisit this. $100 components for $150, $100 components for $700, $100 components for $1,000. What's going on here? Well, if you realize what's going on, the point is this. Samsung is fighting a war that is hard to fight, because in a digital war, you don't want to be stuck in the middle. High-end, low commodity stuff, but at a high-end brand, high-end value. Bottom end on Xiaomi, just low-end, faster, better, cheaper. Right? You do not want to be stuck in the middle in a digital world. Oh, bless you. Sorry. I'll do that again. But the point being is, like, how do we get there, right? So you gotta realize that people are willing to pay for brand, and that's something really different as we talk about this. So let's share with you a couple things in the book. You can look here and never have to read the book again, but I'll sign it for you. But here's what's going on. This digital disruption, it's not about adding a technology. This is a business model shift. This is changing the way we engage. And that's the important piece here. We have to look about how we shift our engagement. Now, we know all these trends are happening, but mobile is about our ability to do things in motion. Social, as you've seen before in the past, is our ability to change how we engage. This is not create, read, update, delete. We're publishing, we're pushing, we're liking, we're sharing, we're doing different things. We need to wash our hands after this slide. But when you think about cloud, what are we doing with cloud? Unlimited access to compute power, unlimited access to storage, bringing all that together. What are we doing with big data? It's not about big data, it's about getting better insights. And what do we do with IoT? IoT is about all this context. We're getting sensors that are making devices smarter, but they're providing us context so we can do something with that context. And 3D printing, that's pretty cool. It changes the way we look at manufacturing. But what happens is we focus on design. Imagine 3D printers in 100 distribution centers at Amazon. Who's doing manufacturing, right? It changes this. And these are business model shifts. So everyone here probably knows Uber, right? So when you look at Uber, what's going on? It's mobile. You're looking to see where you are. They're looking to see where you are. You pin it. OK, it's social. The driver has like 4.7 stars. OK, I'll take that driver, right? They're looking at you. Was that a crappy passenger? Oh, OK, we'll skip that ride, right? That's what's going on. Cloud brings all that together. What happens when it rains? What happens to your cab fare? Surge pricing. Your $10 cab fare becomes a $20 cab fare, right? That's big data in action with dynamic pricing. Internet of Things, it's tracking the motion. People are using the routes for streets and planning and really think about traffic and congestion and trying to figure out routes. There's no 3D printing involved in Uber, but there might be where we deliver parts on the fly on an Uber route in autonomous cars. See, that's what's actually shifting. And so what's about Uber? It's a business model. It takes advantage of those technologies. Those technologies and channels like IoT and mobile, that's there as part of the business model. And our job is to think about the business model, not just think about the channel, which is the problem with a lot of this. Now, you could be having the same business metric and do things differently. In the airline industry, how many people think it's about passenger safety? Raise your hands. How many people think it's about customer experience? Raise your hands. A few passionate romantics. How many people think it's revenue per passenger mile? I know, sadly. But look at the bottom. What we have there is an Airbus A380. That is about hub and spoke. That's about going New York to London, LA to Sydney, right? That's increasing more butts and seats. So that's incremental innovation. The same business metric could be used on the Dreamliner, which is very different. That's transformational. It's lighter, right? It flies direct. I can do Osaka to San Jose. What a crazy route. Who'd do that? But it does happen. And what it does is it allows you to do point to point. And that's what makes that transformational. Now, the second piece is important is we're no longer selling products or services. We're delivering on experiences and outcomes and ultimately the brand promise. That brand promise is what's giving you value. That's giving you margin. What do you stand for and why do you stand for? And so this battle for experiences is really important because it's happening not just with partners and customers and employees and vendors, it's the entire journey. That journey is a completely monetizable journey if you do this properly. And so what does this mean? Well, think about it. Product companies are giving away products for services. You can get a free cell phone with a 2-year contract. Services companies are giving away services for different types of business models, right? What's happening with services companies? If we go freemium to premium, what happens? Oh, wait. If you add more users, if you use more connections, if you consume more time, right? So we're going to freemium to premium models on that piece. And we think about it, experience-based business companies are giving away business models like outcomes, uptime. So if you want it for free, go ahead. But if you want 80% uptime, we're going to start charging you. Oh, that's kind of interesting. And if you want 90% uptime, we're going to start charging you, right? And people that are selling business models are saying, look, we'll take care of everything, peace of mind, here's all you need to pay, one fee. We'll bundle everything for you. So when you look at the shift, something big is happening. All right, I'm getting another clicker. So what's going on here? Think about this. Who's in the medical device industry? Anybody? All right, so this machine used to be sold for $1 million a piece, right? What's the metric here that matters? Revenue per patient scan per day, right? How many people can we run through that machine? How much can we make from that individual? Hospitals buy this, clinics buy this machine, and so they'd sell you a $1 million machine, then they'd sell you a training program. Then they'd sell you a maintenance plan. Then they'd support you a support plan. Then they try to upgrade you a couple years down the line. Right? Sounds like hardware, sounds like software, sounds like everything we've typically done. What happens now? You know what matters? The only thing I care about is uptime. So for $3 million, I'm going to give you that machine with 80% uptime for the next 4 years. You want 95% uptime? That's going to cost you $5 million. See where we're going with this thing? And that's the shift. Now, on top of that, what does that mean? That means as the operator of that machine, I've got to monitor that thing. I've got to make sure that machine never, ever goes down. I've got to make sure I'm monitoring that thing. And guess what? Now I've got all this data on the machine. That's the IoT aspect. I have a business on monetizing that data. I can do benchmark and comparisons. What does Johns Hopkins do better than Stanford? What does Stanford do better than Berkeley? What does Mayo Clinic do better than, some in London Hospital? What is going on? Why do community hospitals do better with academic medical centers? What's happening there? Now you have data to sell. Now you have a whole consulting line of services, monitoring services that are actually happening on that machine because you have that data and that insight. It's a brand new revenue stream that's being popped up right there. Disney, great example. Who's seen a Disney movie in a theater? Raise your hands. Who bought the VHS? That just means you're old, but that's okay. I'm 44, so that's okay. I bought VHS too. Who got it on Blu-ray? Anyone watch it on Netflix? Did the ending change on that movie? You bought it 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. That's crazy, right? But that's okay. The ending didn't change. Who's been to a Disney theme park? Who's been to a Disney vacation? A Disney cruise? You can retire in Bangalore, India, and Celebration, Florida at a Disney resort. They have their own Disney retirement communities. Okay, so it's Disney. Let me ask you, why do you put up with the process? Why do you put up with the way they force you into an environment? Why do you put up with $10 turkey legs? It's magical. It's awesome. It's about the experience, okay? It's and a hat, and a mouse hat, right? Well, it's about that experience, right? And it's also because it's automagical, it's a vacation, it's a family thing, and people really want to have that experience. And it's going to be consistently good. But here's the interesting thing about Disney, right? They know ultimately that they're not competing with you. They're not competing with another theme park. They're not competing with another character. They're ultimately competing for your time and attention. You could grab a book and not go to a Disney resort. You could be watching TV with your friends. You could be playing cards. You could be having dinner with a loved one. It doesn't matter. They know that they're not competing with another company. It's ultimately time and attention. And this is what is an important piece about that. Because if you're delivering on a brand promise, on that experience, you've captured their time and attention. Now, let's get to the fun part. Unit cost pricing models. Yeah, I know. Didn't sound so fun. But what is unit cost pricing models? How do we get to the smallest increment of something we sell? And that becomes really important. Now, MBAs love to talk about, we're not selling you the razor, we're selling the blades. These guys are going to the extreme. If you watch these commercials, but not with your kids, and keep the volume down. This is shaves as a service. These guys are actually making sure you get razors on a regular basis, right? You'll never go out. You'll never run out of a razor, right? That's shaves as a service. That's pulling it to the extreme. But let's say we take something tangible like Coke. I'm going from selling you a case of Coke to a 2-liter Coke to a can of Coke. Who here would pay 10 cents for a sip of Coke? Anybody? 5 cents for a sip of Coke? All right, but if you can think about the smallest increment you would buy something at, they've got freestyle machines. I can now bundle. If I know the smallest unit cost of something, I can bundle unlimited sips of Coke at any Coca-Cola freestyle machine in the world. Who would do that? 50 bucks, unlimited sips of Coke, any freestyle machine in the world. I know, it's a hard crowd. Everyone here does licensing and pricing. But think about it. That's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to bundle experiences. One day of my competitor's analyst firm services at Gartner's $20,000. How much would you pay for a minute of analyst time? Wow, that's a really weird question, right? How much would you pay for a minute of a lawyer's time? How much would you pay for a minute of use on a video game? That's what we're trying to get to. You have to think about the smallest unit cost that you can get to. If you can do that, you can start bundling different types of experiences, which will take you there. This is officially a tough clicker. So what does this mean? We got to capture data. We are looking for all types of data. Data is the foundation of all this. Every click, every interaction, how do we capture that? You're not in a digital business model if you're not capturing that data, if you're not monitoring that data, if you're not analyzing that data. And what we're really trying to do is not just about all these types of data. It's the fact that it's very viral. It's the fact that this data is actually being produced at a rapid quantity. And when we add IoT and sensors to the equation, that's a lot of information. 80 billion sensors churning out 100 million viral connections per minute. Crazy. But that's not what we want. What we're trying to deliver is take that data and that information, put it into a stream that's of information. That information ties back to a business process, procure to pay, campaign to cash, lead to order, concept to production. All those things are important. Once we have that, we're getting to insights, and these insights are important. We want patterns to surface up. We want to take those insights and then take action. It might be a recommendation. It might give us an idea of where competitors are, but we want action. So here's an interesting point. We worked at a client. They had 1,000 salespeople. Their top 71 salespeople had the same trait. And this is a company that spends hundreds of millions, right? Hundreds of millions on training and development. They spend hundreds of millions making sure they have the right people. They make hundreds of millions making sure that they've got the right processes in recruiting and talent. 71 people, top salespeople. What do you think was the #1 trait of their top salespeople? Anybody? Which one? They like to talk. Okay, fair enough. Soft skills, personal skills. That's actually important. I'll show you why. Anyone else? Putting a customer first. Okay. Persistence, networking. What else? Curiosity. Okay. All true, and I'll explain why later. But 71 of the top 1,000 salespeople never went to college. Oh, great. What does that mean? What do we do now? All right, so we look deeper into the data. We try to figure out other patterns. What's happening? What's going on in this information? 333 salespeople have the same trait as the 71 people who didn't go to college. Anyone want to take a venture? One last shot. Ambition. Yes, but let me explain why. They all started with 1 year of customer service and support experience. Made them more empathetic, made them more customer focused. It helped them not sell a product that didn't work, right? They understand how to do solution selling. And that's what we're trying to get to. Once they realize that, now the team that they put on that first program is now performing at 70% better than any other team. Because what do? When they first come, they spend a month in customer service and support. And after the end of each year, they spend a week in customer service and support. That's what we want to do with this data. We want to take data, all this crap that's out there, make it into information, get it in some insights, figure out the patterns, and do something with it. That's what this is about, and we want to do that in a secure way. Right? This data, this information, there's a loop. Right? It's very important to do that secure sense and respond that's there. Now, this is what I'm talking about. 20% of your business model isn't coming from these insights, these competitive advantages, these learnings. You don't really have a digital business. That is the advantage. The advantage is coming from the data that we're collecting, understanding how people are using this. And once we do that, we get some interesting stuff. So I was on a panel with Chip Conley, actually last week. It was actually interesting. We're talking about Airbnb. Now, the interesting thing about Airbnb is not the number of people that are part of Airbnb. It's not the people and not knowing that they've got more room nights than Intercontinental, Hilton, Starwood, and Marriott combined. What's interesting about them is the fact that there's 500,000 people I can trust with $1 million property. And what I want to do is learn more about that 500,000 people. And the insights on that 500,000 people say, I can now do Airbnb for yachts, do Airbnb for high-end luxury goods, jets. I can do different things with this that I couldn't do before because I have those insights. And what we really want to get to is those insights, because that's the most important thing. And so these insight economies are actually emerging. How do we build different types of differentiation? So the first part is, who uses Google Maps? Waze. Does it work? Kind of. In the Bay Area, it's okay. I live a mile from here, so I don't really need Waze right now. Other than that, Stevens Creek is blocked. So when we think about this, right, what's going on? Well, that's information-based differentiation. But imagine if your car was out of gas, you were somewhere else on a business trip, would you pay $1 to find the nearest gas station? Who would do that? I know 100 gas stations in the area that would easily pay $500 to $1,000 to find out who only has 2 gallons of gas and offer you a hot dog and a Coke and a fill-up. That's the business model. That's instant information-based differentiation. Now let's take this even further. We talk about unit cost pricing models. Imagine in the middle of Union Square in San Francisco, you want to put up a pop-up store on 4th of July. It's a 10 by 10 pop-up store. How much would you pay for rent for an hour? Strange question, isn't that? But guess what? I've got satellite imagery. I know the traffic patterns. I got Verizon cell phone data. I know how many people walk through a cell. I've got Trulia and all this information about rents in the area. I can tell you between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m., I'll charge you $1,000 an hour. And between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., I'm going to charge you $4,000 an hour. And between 2 p.m. and 7 p.m., I'm going to charge you back to $2,000 an hour. And after 7 p.m., you can have it for free. I don't care. Right? Maybe that's how we get to these models. And that's what we're trying to do. Take all that different types of information and bring it together and create these new opportunities. Right? And that's where we get to these insight economies. And that's where we're going to move in the future. Now, here's the interesting thing. This was kind of hinted at earlier, I think, by Shlomo in terms of some of the models. We are moving to network economies. That bottom part on the slide, talking about these ecosystems around payments and billing and all these other connections and all the other insight things, that partner ecosystem is the future. You're either the content, the network, or the technology, which we call the arms dealer. Content being a service, a product, an experience, or insight. Network being our distribution model. How do we go to market? What are the channels? How do we get something out there? And when you realize that this is the battle that's out there, in the past, content companies might have worked with a network and partnered with them. Network companies sold product as resellers and got the content to the market. Everybody used some level of technology. In the digital world, all three are converging. There are 4 companies in the world that can actually go from, in the free world, that can go from consumer, cloud, to your hands. And these are the 4 companies. I took Alibaba off the list. But let me explain why. These 4 companies can take anything from a cloud and deliver it to your hands. And it's actually a very interesting model because they actually have 4 monopolies. And these are 4 big monopolies. And let me use Amazon as an example. Amazon has been basically using their network, their systems, to figure out how to compete with their competitors. So anybody who's, actually, wait, anybody here from Amazon before I get killed again? So when you look at Amazon, this is my personal opinion, and when you look at Amazon, they're horrible to partner with. They're one of the worst partners in the world. Think about what they did in commerce. They basically, everyone here except for eBay is no longer a partner of theirs and had to sue them because they all used their commerce platform. That is not fun. That's not where you want to go, right? And so when you think about this, it's actually a world against Amazon. But what is Amazon doing? They're building content network and technology. So here on the shopping side, we get that. That's getting to the goods. That's building the network. That's taking the product to door. If we think about the media side, Netflix loves to say, anyone here from Netflix? Netflix loves to say, we put all our servers on Amazon, right? I'm like, that's the stupidest thing you ever did. Okay, fine. But what's going on? Amazon's studying the workloads and trying to figure out, can they deliver the same types of videos more efficiently than Netflix and at what times of the day, right? They've got their data. It's not private data, it's performance data, right? But they're doing that right now. And Amazon's actually going into the media space very quickly, producing their own shows, delivering their own content. Every song you ever bought in the past is now available in the library on Amazon Prime. That's pretty wild. Every video is now being stored there. That's what we're talking about. And then when we think about distribution, one of their biggest costs is shipping. Who's seeing the UPS, actually, who's seeing the Postal Service on Sundays delivering? What are they delivering? Only Amazon. You don't get letters on Sunday, do you? They're putting 100 distribution centers in North America, 3 times the size of an average football field. And basically what they want to do is deliver on the last mile. Now let's take a look at what's going on with cloud computing. In cloud computing, this is a fun. All right, and whoa, here we go again. In cloud computing, what we see is basically their ability to deliver on peak. They need to support from January to November back to January. This area is peak, and for them, that's their ability to deliver on Christmas. If you use Amazon's cloud and you compete with them, you're subsidizing your competitor's ability to crush you on peak. What's going on here? Very interesting. Now, Jeff Bezos just bought the Washington Post 2 years ago for $500 million. Cheap. The Post is not a national newspaper. The Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and the USA Today are the national newspapers. But guess what? I got 100 distribution centers. I can easily put the paper in people's physical hands if I want to. I've got a Kindle device, if I can get to that. I've got a Kindle device. And what that device does, it allows you to actually deliver directly to the Washington Post. And guess what? I can take all the news feeds and get to the media. You are witnessing content, network, and tech converging. It's Under Armour buying a tech company. It's all these different things where these channels are now being morphed into the products, which are morphed into the technology. And these are the network economies that we look at. More importantly is when we think about IoT, this is the ultimate network economy. Right now we're just thinking about sensors. Oh, I got all this sensor data. Great, who cares? What are you doing with the sensor data? Oh wait, we're putting it into stacks and platforms. Okay, great, the platforms are coming together. We're collecting that information. Nothing happens until we get to level 4. And at level 4, we're brokering that data. I want to know how much power you use in your building. I want to know how much water you consume. I want to know how many people cross your front door. I'm going to take that information and start brokering that. That's the monetization that's actually happening. Things you didn't think were monetizable are now being used. And so what we're trying to do is capture that information, broker that information, and I would say almost every one of you will almost be like a Thomson Reuters, LexisNexis, or Bloomberg in the future with your information and insight. And you're going to have to figure out how to monetize that, take that stream, broker it, sell it, put it into marketplaces, especially with IoT and the amount of information that's coming from that, because what we're trying to do is capture better context. Make sense? All right, so we talked about business models. We talked about technology. Let's talk a little bit about humanizing the digital experience. We need digital artisans, right? Right brain, left brain. If you got a lot of scientists, technology, engineering, math people, I got to match it with ethnographers, user experience folks, people who understand anthropology, people understand sociology, people understand how to tell stories, design thinking. Why? Well, let's go to GE here. Their job is to deliver power at 99.9999999 GE black belt % uptime, right? That's their job. So what do? They know when a power line goes down 8 to 10 days before it happens, by humidity, by vibration, by wind speed, by temperature, by the cable manufacturer, by the team who put the cable up there. 8 to 10 days before. Now, if they did a great job and the math was great, you normally get a spreadsheet. But this was done by people who understand design thinking and usability. You can click on any of those buttons and figure out what's going on. You can drill in, drill down, understand what's happening. It is being monitored in real time. And only the information you need to see at that point as an operator is what you get. That's what we're talking about. And that's how we pair and make it human. And we have to invest in digital artisans, because if we don't do that, we can't make this stuff usable for humans. And that's what we're trying to get to, is how do we get this to be usable and so that we can balance out the right brain and the left brain. Let's see. Here we go. Now, the eighth thing is the fact that we're trying to strip out transaction costs. Who uses a reseller today? Who's happy with their reseller? Just kidding. If you're using a reseller, they have to be delivering value. If they're not delivering value, we're going to strip it out, because we're going direct to consumer and we're going to P2P models very, very quickly. Tesla, great example. Wonderful car, supposedly environmentally efficient. It does take 10 times more power to make the car than they'll ever save, but that's fine. No one cares about that. What they care about is the fact that they are stripping out the model. They're going direct to consumer. There's no dealers, right? So unlike all those other companies that have to do with the dealer model, they can go direct to you. Now, who remembers Michael Dell? He's big in the news again. All right, Michael, back in the day, pioneered this model where basically you could buy a computer online, configure it, and it would show up to your door with no training and manuals, right? It's pretty wild. You didn't have to wait. You didn't have to do all this weird stuff. It actually showed up. I'm sitting next to Michael at Dell World 3 years ago, and he's looking at my phone. And he's like, "Hey, Ray, looks like you got a Tesla." I'm like, "Yeah, what do you want?" He's like, "Well, I got a Tesla too. It's really weird. I ordered this car online. I configured it, and I didn't think about it. 6 months later, my wife calls me up yesterday and says, 'Hey, there's a car outside. They just dropped it off. What do we do with this thing?'" That is what we're talking about. The man who pioneered the model didn't realize that it was happening to him in the car space. And that is direct to consumer. Now, what are we talking about? Etsy or Regretsy, if you ordered a lot of things like I did. Etsy is great. I'm going from craft people direct to you. When we think about Lending Club, you can loan money to people without having to send a hitman to collect. Right? People want banking, they don't want banks. And this is what we're able to do in peer-to-peer markets. And we talked about this last year, but TaskRabbit, the ability to get someone to help you with an IKEA furniture or change a light bulb or to do something in the backyard or find help or find a tutor, that's wonderful. That's what we're doing here. That is the P2P model in action. That's what we're trying to get to. Okay, real quick. What are we doing? Customer segments. We're trying to get mass personalization at scale. That's oxymoronic. How do we get to mass personalization at scale? Well, the point being is we've got to get to lots of context, but there are a couple of things that are happening. And the first one really is, and this is a very complicated thing, talking about how we go from transactions to engagement. You can read it in HBR, moving from transactions to engagement. But the main thing about this is customer journeys are not prescribed. They're not force-fit funnels. They're not best cases of business processes. Think of customer journeys as choose-your-own adventure books. Start on page 1, go to page 10, end up on page 30, go to 100, come back to 50, go back to 7. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, the end. Remember those books? That's what a customer journey is. It's self-directed. And what we're trying to do is deliver on that. The second thing is, this is not about predictive analytics. This is about intention-driven design. What do I mean by intention-driven design? Who here gets coffee at the same time in the morning? Raise your hands. I'm going to pick on you. Okay, I'm going to pick on you. Who are you and your name real quick? Bruce. What time do you get coffee?
7 o'clock.
You buy coffee or make coffee? Okay, who buys coffee? I'm going to try this because this is going to be important. Who buys coffee at the same time in the morning? Damn, it's all licensing professionals. They know how this works. All right, let's say you make coffee at 7. Do you ever buy coffee in the morning? Never. Ugh, licensing professionals, smart, completely understand the business model. No, okay, so who gets coffee at 7 in the morning or buys coffee?
I did this morning.
You did this morning. Do you always buy coffee?
No.
Ah, this is the worst place for this. No, anyways. Okay, no, I knew you guys were really, really smart. Here's the thing, like if you get coffee at 7 in the morning all the time from Starbucks, right, you're wasting a lot of money. We all know that, right? That's why you guys are here, you're optimizing. But if you get it at 7 in the morning, get a tall black, that's wonderful. Right? Predictive says you're going to do that. Okay, that's great. So we keep offering you a coffee at 7 in the morning. But what happens when you're on the road? Or you get coffee at 7 in the morning? Something changed. The location changed. Right? What happens if your heart rate is beating really fast? You get a hot coffee? You might get an iced coffee if it's at that point. It's 2 p.m. Would you get a coffee and something else to eat? Does that change? And what we're doing with intention-driven is we know what you're going to do. We're going to make an offer based on context to do something different. Right? So let's see what you're going to do. And if you take that offer, then I'm going to learn that. And we use that machine learning to do something else with it to make you another offer to see if you're going to bite again. If you bite twice, then next time you're running around with your heart rate really fast at 2 p.m., I'm going to make sure to say, hey, I know you like a tall black, but how about an iced coffee? And I'm going to make that suggestion. I'm going to make that recommendation. And that's why intention-driven is so important, because we're moving to an intention-driven model. So it's not just customer journeys, it's not just predictive, it's choose your own adventure journeys, and we're moving to intention-driven design. And then the third piece that's really important is that the information that we're pulling around context becomes so important because that contextual data drives your ability to be very relevant, drives your ability to deliver rich personalization. And so you want to monetize that data. You want to monetize that information. And this is where identity becomes important. Your ability to identify someone in different contexts, deliver a different role and experience on that context helps us deliver a mass personalization at scale. All right, last piece. May have done this last year, but we'll ask, who's sick of millennials? You can raise your hands. All right. So we want to look at the world differently when you look at segmentation. This is important for transformation and also for the way you market. And why we talk about this is the intersection between your understanding of a technology and your likelihood to use this. And that's really important. So if you are a digital native, and I volunteer in retirement homes, and what happens is they're all digital. No one's using paper. They're on tablets. Right? So that just blew your first thing about digital natives. They're not all 20. They're not all kids. They're comfortable with it. They're using a tablet. Who here is taking notes on paper? You are digital immigrants. Who's going to take a picture and mail it to themselves? You're doubly a digital immigrant. Right? Because what happens, you're navigating between both types of technologies and making your way through. And that makes a very different kind of profile. Digital holdouts, digital voyeurs are the ones that say, hey, that's kind of interesting. I'm not ready to dip my toe in there. Digital holdouts, they're like, oh, I'm not going to do that. That's not me. And digitally disengaged, they pay with cash. They use burner phones and SIM cards, and they avoid video cameras because they don't trust the government. But it could be all ages, right? That's important. It could be all ages, and that's important. And it's not just by saying, hey, that's baby boomers versus Gen X. That's the design point. Just make sure you think about that. Don't use age as the defining factor. Think about digital proficiency as well. Okay, so what's going on? You have no time to wait. Digital Darwinism is unkind to those who wait. There is no time to wait. Let me explain why. Richard Foster, wonderful study, S&P 500, looked at the conception of the S&P 500. Average age of a company was 60 years. Average age today is 15, going to 12 by 2020. That's a 4x to 5x compression. If you don't have a digital business model, you probably won't be around. Right, you really won't. If you're a hardware vendor still selling hardware, you're in the wrong business. If you're a software vendor thinking you're selling software, you're in the wrong business. If you're an information insights company still selling insights, you're in the wrong business because those models have shifted, and you all know that. And that's really why this is so important, especially what you're learning here in the next few days and what's going on in all these new business models people are doing around all the different types of technologies. This is a business model war. What are we trying to do? We're ultimately trying to jumpstart growth. If you look at the average age of a startup and working their way from, we call them dreamers now. Yes, hopeless dreamers. These are underfunded startups. People have great ideas, family-run businesses that are trying to get to the next level. But when they get that funding, become West Coast VC-backed startups, what happens? They have all the cash in the world to grow the business as much as they can. They have all the fast. They're tasked with growing 80 to 120% a year. They're hiring 200, 300 people a year, right? With that kind of market momentum, they're focused on growth. But what happens when they go public? They start becoming margin companies. They start coming back to the Fortune 500. They start focusing on margin instead of growth. And there is that cycle. Your job is to think like a West Coast VC-backed firm. And think about how would you grow using the business model as your competitive advantage. That's how we grow. Real quick, Maslow's hierarchy. Remember this? Right? Worry about my ego, keep me safe, keep me sheltered on the bottom. This is the business version, and this is why companies often fail. And if you look at the business version, on the bottom is regulatory compliance. Don't get me sued, don't get me fired, don't get me killed. Right? Operational efficiency. Every dollar invest, I'm going to save you 2, 3, 4. Revenue and growth. Every dollar invest, I'm going to make you 4, 5, 6. Strategic differentiation, that is about business model transformation. That is the shift. And brand, that's, if your company was a person, what would they be like? No, just kidding. That is like, why? Why do you exist? That is your mission. That is your mission statement. Every company in the world allocates their budget, allocates their time, allocates their energy. When push comes to shove, they operate in this model. And you will fail because that acts like a margin company. Margin companies do this. They just strip cost out to make their numbers on a short-term basis. They no longer care about their brand. And what you really have to do is flip the pyramid to get there. Anything you can do to streamline regulatory compliance, operational efficiency will help you grow, because you should be focused on what your company is about and what is the right business model for your company so that you can then build revenue and products that help you grow. This other stuff, this is the stuff that gets outsourced. This is the stuff that gets put into software. This gets put into algorithms. What we want to do is make sure that you're not worried on that piece. You don't want to be counting boxes. You want to be counting licenses. That's the stuff. This stuff is automated. Up here, that's what you should be focusing your time on if you really want to grow. Okay, so none of this works without tech and business. This is really important. You've seen this maybe before. But the first thing is that, what do companies really want? Business side of the house wants things simple. No training, no manuals, easy to use. What else do they want? They want to be scalable. They don't have to call IT to make a shift. And what do they ultimately want? Stuff that's sexy, fun to use. Right? Does that sound right on the business side? All right, on the tech side, what do we want? Well, we've spent years making these systems really, really stable, right? And what they really want is make sure that it's safe. Don't take out these systems. They want it secure. Nobody wants to be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal with a data breach. And they want long-term platforms. But these aren't 10-year platforms. The platforms are shift. We've gone from 10-year to 5-year to 3-year to 18 to 24-month platforms. What's the average age of a consumer mobile app? 46 days. Your long-term platform is 2 years, right? And that's what we're talking about. And how do we build that? Well, it's really important. If you think about it, business keeps moving. They're not going to wait for IT. IT's got to scale up, and over time, that's how you get there. What happens when IT wins to business? You stagnate. You go bankrupt, right? You guys are like, we bought a large German software player with 3 letters and went bankrupt. You put that in your SEC statements. That's crazy, right? What happens when business wins to IT? You get the chaos we have, right? Consumerization of IT, bring your own device, all these open points that are completely unsecure. And that's what we're trying to find, is that balance. And if you get to this balance, this is kind of how we succeed. All right, real quick. Not that quick. Real quick. This is hard to use. Requires a PhD. Real quick, what we're trying to do is build new experiences and outcomes. If you want to succeed in creating monetization, think about what the brand is about. And it's really about building, what is the brand promise? Those new experiences and outcomes come from what your brand mission is about, where you're trying to go. The second piece is get the digital artisans in place. Make sure you have people that are thinking not just the quant side, but also the qualitative stuff. We want right brain, left brain. When we have that in place, then we can start thinking about new monetization models. This is the unit cost pricing. This is thinking about going direct to consumer. This is the areas where we're thinking about how do we use products and services and transcend that and actually deliver on that promise and that outcome that people want to buy. That's the bundling of all that. Then what we want to think about is all that data we're collecting, how do we use that to create a competitive advantage? We want to go from gut-driven to data-driven. Take those insights and create brand new business models. We gave you 3 examples of those business models that are emerging. IoT gives you huge opportunities to create brand new business models. And then the last piece is you can't scale in a digital world unless someone builds on your platform. It is so important. If you want that network content and technology, you have to give a platform for someone else to build on top. You got to think about how you monetize your platform with partners who might even compete with you. And when you do that, you'll be able to scale up in a very, very fast fashion. All right, so real quick. World's collapsing. 52% of the Fortune 500 are gone. OK, we got past that. But more importantly, what are we doing? We're in a digital business model shift. We have to think about ways to monetize that digital business model shift. It is truly a transformation. These are business model wars you're engaging with. These are not product feature wars. The example I used with Samsung is real. I'm sitting at the Samsung Galaxy launch in Mobile World Congress last year. I'm sitting next to the head of products. I can't remember her name. And I'm sitting with the head of marketing and the guy in charge, Chief Digital Officer, Chael, which is their advertising agency. They go to me, what do you think? And I said, you built the best phone. It's a beautiful phone. But guess what? Nobody cares. Because there's no business model behind it that a developer can get behind that will monetize. There's no business model for apps and partners to build on top of so that they can monetize. It is no longer about building the best product. It never was. It's no longer about the best marketing. It is truly about the best business model. And if you succeed here, when you think about what you have and all the people and all the brain power in this room, right, you've got the future set of business models in front of you. And that's what you need to disrupt digital business. Thank you very much.